بسم الله والحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. So in the last class, we took the statement of the author rahimahullah ta'ala, where he said, وَالْإِيمَانُ بِالْمِيزَانِ يَوْمَ الْقِيَامَةِ يُوزَنُ فِيهِ الْخَيْرُ وَالشَّرُّ لَهُ كِفَّتَانِ وَلَهُ لِسَانِ. So the author rahimahullah ta'ala, Imam al-Barbahārī, he said, and to believe in the mizan, to believe in the scale on the day of judgment. We mentioned that this is a part of our belief system, that we believe that on the day of judgment that there's going to be a scale on which is going to be weighed a person's good deeds and his bad deeds. Lahu kiffatan wa lahu lisan. And it has two weighing pans and it has a tongue. So for those who were here, very quickly, with regard to the last portion, because it might seem obscure or not clear to some people, lahu kiffatan wa lahu lisan. Kiffatan, we mentioned that a scale, it has two weighing pans. On each side, there's a weighing pan. What was the proof and evidence that was used or that was mentioned to support this? That this scale has two weighing pans on the day of judgment. You don't have to mention the hadith bin nas. You don't have to mention it in totality or anything like this, but just refer to the hadith. We gave the name for this hadith. Hadith al-Bitaqa. The hadith of the card. What's this hadith with regard to? The meaning of it, the meaning of the hadith. A person is going to be brought on the day of judgment. He's going to be called on upon before all of the creation on the day of judgment, and he's not going to have any good deeds except what? The statement, La ilaha illallah Muhammadur Rasulullah. And he's going to have how many scrolls of bad deeds? 99. 99 scrolls of bad deeds as far as his eye can see. And the hadith, it concludes mentioning that card that says La ilaha illallah Muhammadur Rasulullah is going to outweigh those bad deeds, those scrolls of bad deeds. So this is a proof and evidence to show that on the day of judgment, a person's deeds are going to be weighed in these two weighing pans, kiffatan. What was intended by lisan, according to what Shaykh Fawzan had mentioned? It's the middle part of the scale. So anyone who's ever seen a scale in the middle, right? If you were to put, we mentioned the example, a brick in one of the weighing pans, say they weigh the same amount, what's going to happen to the middle of the scale? It's going to even out. It's going to be straight. All right? So that's what was intended by lisan. It's not talking about an actual tongue or he's going to speak or anything like this. This is what was being referred to. The middle part of the scale. So tonight is a very important topic with regard to the creed. قال المؤلف رحمه الله والإيمان بعذاب القبر ومنكر ونكير. So the author rahimahullah, he said, and to believe in the punishment of the grave, and munkar and nakir. So in the explanation, Shaykh Fawzan, he says, كذلك من عقيدة أهل السنة والجماعة الإيمان بعذاب القبر ونعيم القبر. So likewise, one of the core beliefs of Ahl Sunnah is to believe in the punishment and the bliss of the grave. فَالْمَيِّتُ وَإِمَّا أَنْ يُعَذَّبَ فِي قَبْرِهِ وَإِمَّا أَنْ يُنَعَّمْ. So when a person dies, we know as Muslims that after a person is buried, that's not it. That's not it. The atheists and people who deny the existence of Allah, they say when a person dies, that's it. The soil and the insects is going to eat a person's body up and it's just going to decompose and that's it. As Muslims, we know that this is not the case. So when the deceased person is placed in his grave, either he's going to be in a state of bliss or he's going to be punished in his grave. It's one of two situations. إِلَىٰ أَنْ يُبْعَثَ يَوْمَ الْقِيَامَةِ. And this is going to take place for how long? Until the day of judgment. وَالْقَبْرُ هُوَ مَنْزِلَةٌ بَيْنَ الدُّنْيَا وَالْآخِرَةِ. And the grave, it is a stage that's between this world and the hereafter. وَلِذَلِكَ يُسَمَّى بِالْبَرْزَخِ. And this is why it's called al-Barzakh. لأن البرزخ هو الحاجز بين شيئين. So this goes back to the Arabic language. So al-Barzakh, linguistically, this is a partition that's between two things. And he mentions a verse, قال تعالى مرج البحرين يلتقيان. And he lets loose the two oceans that meet one another. بينهما برزخ لا يبغيان. And between them there is a partition, and they cannot transgress against this partition. لا يبغي المالح على العذب ولا يبغي العذب على المالح. So, as we know, and perhaps some of the brothers and the sisters, they have seen this, there's pictures, or you can go to YouTube, the salt water and the fresh water. Can they mix? They can't mix. If you were to go and see in person or see a video or a picture, it's almost as though it's water and oil. You see the fresh water on one side and the salt water on one side. They don't mix. They're different colors. Even though they're both water, they're different colors. So he says the salt water, it doesn't mix with the fresh water. And vice versa. لأن الله جعل بينهما فاصلا. Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has put a partition between the two of them. لا يختلط هذا بهذا. Right, this water, it can mix with the other side. فالبرزخ هو الفاصل بين الشيئين. So al-Barzakh, it is a partition that's between two things. لأن الدور ثلاث. And this is because the abodes are of three. What are the three abodes? The three stages that a person is going to go through. The first one is the most obvious. Darud Dunya, the life of this world. That's the life that we're in right now. The Barzakh, Darul Barzakh. And what else? The Akhirah, Darul Qarar. Right, that's the permanent abode. هذه الدور التي يمر بها العباد. These are the three stages by which people are going to go through. Darul Dunya محل العمل. So the life of this world, as we all know, this is a place of putting forth actions. وَدَارُ الْبَرْزَخْ وَهِيَ مَحَلُّ الْإِنْتِظَارِ. And the abode of the Barzakh, that's the place of waiting. After a person dies and he's placed in his grave, he's going to wait there until the Day of Judgment. وَدَارُ الْقَرَارِ هِيَ دَارُ الْجَزَاءِ. And the final abode, or the permanent abode, it is the abode of recompense, meaning the Day of Judgment. وَاللَّهُ جَلَّ وَعَلَى يَقُولُ حَتَّى زُرْتُمُ الْمَقَابِرِ. And Allah Jalla wa Ala said, the meaning of the verse, until you visit the graves. فَدَلَّ عَلَى أَنَّ الْمَقَابِرَ لَيْسَتْ مَحَلَّ إِقَامَةٍ. So this is an indication that the graves is not a place of residence. بَلِ الْإِنسَانُ فِيهَا مِثْلُ الزَّائِرِ الَّذِي يَزُورُ وَيَرْتَحِلُ. Rather, a person, when he's in this abode, right, dealing with regard to the grave, then he's like a visitor. Right? He's just visiting and then he's going to leave. جَعَلَ الْمُكْثَ فِي الْمَقَابِرِ زِيَارَةً. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He has made, that a period that a person is going to stay in his grave like is a visit. لِأَنَّهُ يُقِيمُ فِيهَا ثُمَّ يَرْتَحِلُ. Because he's going to stay there and then he's going to leave. لكن في فترة وجوده في القبر أول ما يوضع في القبر ويسوى عليه التراب وينصرف الناس عنه وإنه لا يسمع قرع نعالهم. This is taken from the hadith. The Shaykh, he mentions, however, when a person is in his grave, right, when a person is initially placed in his grave and the dirt or the sand is thrown over his grave and the people leave his grave. And he mentions the portion is from a hadith, وَإِنَّهُ لَا يَسْمَعُ قَرْعَ نِعَالِهِمْ. The deceased person, he's going to hear the footsteps of the people who just buried him. He's going to hear that. يَأْتِيهِ مَلَكَانْ فِي الْقَبْرِ. And at that point, two angels are going to come to him. فَيُجْلِسَانِهِ. They're going to sit him up. وَتُعَادُ رُوحُهُ فِي جَسَدِ. And at that point, his soul is going to return back to his body. So this shows that when a person is buried, initially, his soul is not in his body. So when the angels come to him, they're going to sit him up. His soul is going to return back to his body. وَيَحْيَا حَيَاةٍ بَرْزَخِيَّةٍ. And he's going to live, but this is going to be like a life of the barzakh. وَلَيْسَتْ مِثْلَ الْحَيَاةِ الَّتِي فِي الدُّنْيَا. It's not like the life in this world. فَيَسْأَلَانِهِ. And they're going to ask him those well-known questions. For the young guys, or the youth here, what are the 3 questions a person is going to be asked in the grave? Man Rabbuk? Who's your Lord? Oh, I didn't ask for the answer, just the questions. Ahsant. What's the second question? Someone else? Man Rabbuk? Ma dinuk? What's your religion? I don't want to put you on the spot. Man Nabiyuk? Who's your prophet? So these are the 3 questions that every person is going to be asked in the grave. Who's your Lord? What is your religion? And who is your prophet? فَإِذَا جَابَ عَلَى هَذِهِ الْأَسْئِلَةِ بِجَوَابٍ صَحِيحٍ نَجَا. So if a person is asked these 3 questions, which seem very easy, especially if you were born and raised Muslim, it seems like, it's going to be a very easy situation, but that's not necessarily going to be the case. If a person answers these questions and gives the correct answer, naja, he's going to be saved. وَيَسْعَدُ سَعَادَةً لَا شَقَاءَ بَعْدَهَا. And he's going to be happy, and there's not going to be any type of sadness or wretchedness after that. There's some detail to that though, because as we know, with regard to the questions, if a person, for example, was a Muslim, he was a believer, but he used to commit major sins. When the angels come to him in his grave, is he going to be able to give the correct answer? Yes or no? Yeah, we say he's a mu'min, but he was alsi. He was a sinner. آمنوا. أحسنت. نعم, he mentions the verse يثبت الله الذين آمنوا بالقول الثابت في الحياة الدنيا وفي الآخرة. Allah makes firm those who believe with a firm statement in this world and the hereafter. The scholars, they mention that even if a person is a major sinner, if he was truly a believer, he will be able to give the correct answer. But the detail that has to be elaborated on at this point, because the Shaykh, he mentions وَيَسْعَدُ سَعَادَةً لَا شَقَاءَ بَعْدَهَا. He's going to be happy and there's not going to be any sadness or wretchedness after that. This is with regard to the believer that was righteous. This is with regard to the believer that was righteous. As for the believer who died upon major sins, or he died upon committing sins, then it's a possibility he could be punished in his grave. It's a possibility that he could be punished in his grave. An example of this that is well known in the hadith, that comes in the hadith of Anas radiallahu anhu. مر النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم بقبرين. The Prophet صلى الله عليه وسلم passed by 2 graves. وقال إنهما لا يعذبان. And he said these 2 people in these 2 graves, and they're Muslims. Keep in mind, they're Muslims, they're not disbelievers. He said إنهما لا يعذبان. He said they're being punished. Both of them are being punished. وما يعذبان في كبير. They're not being punished for something that's difficult to stay away from. أما أحدهما فكان لا يستتر من البول. The first individual, the Prophet ﷺ said, he did not used to guard himself from what? Urine. That's a reason for a person being punished in his grave. In another hadith, the Prophet ﷺ said, أكثر عذاب القبر من البول. Just imagine that. The majority of the punishment in the grave is due to urine. It's due to the fact that a person doesn't guard himself from urine when he goes to the bathroom. Why do you think that's such a serious issue? It's going to affect your prayer. If a person has urine on his clothes, or he gets urine on his body, if he prays like that, is his prayer valid? His prayer is not valid. So it's serious. It might seem like it's something minute or small, but it's serious. It's going to affect the validity of your prayer. And we know that if a person's prayer is not accepted, that's something serious. So I don't know how many times I have gone to different masajid, but a lot of times, especially after the kids go to the bathroom, what do you find on the toilet seat? There's urine all over the place. There's urine everywhere. So if urine is getting on the toilet seat, I guarantee you 9 out of 10 times it's getting on your body or it's getting on your clothes. So this shows that either the parents are not teaching their children the etiquettes of how to go to the bathroom, or the kids just don't care. And sometimes even brothers do this. Some brothers, they might do construction, or they might do some type of work where they're outside. And if they're not mindful, right, they go to the bathroom. Some brothers are going to urinals. I know of masajid, they have urinals in the bathroom area. Right? A person is going, first of all, there's a lot of mukhalafat with regard to that. A person is exposing himself. But when you stand up like that, you're more than likely to get urine on your clothes. The sunnah is what? Sit down, squat down. If anyone's been to Saudi Arabia, you made Umrah or a Hajj, or you just traveled or whatever the case is. If you go to the Prophet's masjid, for example, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, are you going to find a commode? You might find a few of them, like for older people or people who can't squat. But the majority of the bathrooms are like what? A hole in the ground. You have to squat. You have to squat. That's the sunnah, right? To sit down or to squat, because you're less likely to get urine on your clothes. But that hadith, the first thing that was mentioned was the individual who didn't guard himself from urine. Who was the second individual? Or what did he used to do? Kana yamshi bin namima. He used to spread namima. What's namima? Namima. We say it's gossip or tale carrying, but what does that even mean? Huh? What does that mean? What does that entail when you say someone... Slander. For example, the scholars, they mentioned that it's that a person takes the speech of somebody to someone else بغرض إيش؟ الإفساد. Naam. So the person's not doing it with a good intention. He has a bad intention. So for example, أخونا, our brother, Abu Mujahid, someone comes to him and he says, Khalid said something about you. Right? One day Khalid, you know, he didn't like, for example, I don't know, something that the brother said, and then he said, Khalid said that about you, right? And his intention is to cause problems between the two brothers, right? That's namima. That's a major sin. So the shahid is what? That it's possible that a believer can be punished in his grave. Naam. So the Shaykh, he says, and this is like as we mentioned, the person that's not going to experience any type of misery or sadness after he gives the correct answer in the grave is the believer who is righteous. وَيُوَسَّعُ لَهُ فِي قَبْرِهِ مَدَّ بَصَرِهِ. Right? And his grave is going to be expanded for him as far as his eye can see. Every time we go to bury somebody, right? When you put them in that grave, you see how constricted and how tight that grave is. When a person is in the barzakh, it's not going to be like that if he was a believer. His grave is going to be expanded for him as far as his eye can see. وَيُفْتَحُ لَهُ بَابٌ إِلَى الْجَنَّةِ. And a door to paradise is going to be open for him. وَيَأْتِيهِ مِنْ رَوْحِهَا وَطِيبِهَا. And, the breeze, right? It's going to be a nice breeze and a nice fragrance that's going to come from paradise to this individual while he's in his grave. وَيُؤْمَرُ لَهُ بِفِرَاشٍ مِنَ الْجَنَّةِ. And it's going to be ordered that this individual is furnished with the furnishings of paradise. فَلَا يَزَالُ فِي نَعِيمٍ فِي قَبْرِهِ. So this person is going to be in a constant state of bliss while he's in his grave. وَهَذَا أَمْرٌ غَيْبِي لَا نَعْلَمُهُ. So this is an affair that's of the unseen. We don't know how it really is. فَلَوْ فَتَحْنَا الْقَبْرِ مَا وَجَدْنَا مِنْ ذَلِكَ شَيْئًا. Right? If we were to go to a person's grave and dig that person out, you're not going to find any of this. You're not going to see any of this. لِأَنَّهُ فِي عَالَمٍ وَنَحْنُ فِي عَالَمٍ آخَرٍ. And this is because we're in this world and they're in another world. وَأَمَّا الْمُنَافِقُ وَالْمُرْتَابُ فَإِنَّهُ يَقُولُ إِذَا قِيلَ لَهُ مَنْ رَبُّكَ قَالَ لَا أَدْرِي. So if a person was a hypocrite, a person is acting as though he's a believer in this world, but in his heart, he's really a disbeliever, or he's murtab, he has doubt. He could say that he was a Muslim and he was a believer, but in his heart he's not really sure if Islam was really the truth. When this individual is asked the same question, who is your Lord? He's going to say, I don't know. I don't know. Man nabiyuk? Who's your prophet? La adri. I don't know. Ma dinuk? La adri. What's your religion? I don't know. حتى وإن كان في الدنيا متعلما ويحفظ المتون والشروح. Right? Even if this person in this world, he was educated, he memorized Islamic texts and the explanations that go to those texts, ويحفظ اللغة. And he knows the Arabic language. وهو خطيب مسقع ومتحدث مفوه. And he's a very eloquent speaker. لكن إذا كان ليس عنده إيمان فإنه يتلعثم في القبر. But if this individual didn't have faith, he didn't really truly have iman in his heart, then he's going to stumble when he's in his grave. He's going to stumble when he answers these questions. وَيَعْجَزُ عَنِ الْجَوَابِ. And he's not going to be able to give the correct answer. عندما يسأل عن هذه المسائل يتلجلج. When he's asked these questions or these issues, he's going to fumble. وَيَقول ها لا أدري. He's going to say, I don't know. سمعت الناس يقولون شيئا فقلته. I heard people saying something and I just said it. Right, this is blind following. This is blind following. Person doesn't. This is a degree of blind following. It's a degree of blind following, especially if a person was murtad, if a person, was in doubt with regard to Islam being the truth or not. Right? He just said he was a Muslim. He prayed his 5 prayers. He fasted Ramadan with the Muslims, but in his heart, he really didn't know if Islam was the truth. He was basically just following what other people were doing. وَيُفْتَحُ لَهُ بَابٌ إِلَى النَّارِ. And a gate to the hellfire is going to be open for him. وَيُضَيَّقُ عَلَيْهِ قَبْرُهُ حَتَّى تَخْتَلِفَ أَضْلَاعُهُ. And then this person that's in this situation, when he's in his grave, what did we already say about the believer? His grave is going to be expanded as far as his eye can see. But this person, the hypocrite, and the person who was doubtful, his grave is going to be constricted upon him. And his ribs are going to be crushed together. His ribs are going to be crushed together. وَيَأْتِيهِ مِنْ سَمُومِهَا وَحَرِّهَا. And the wind, the severe wind and the heat from the hellfire is going to come to him in his grave. وَيُفْرَشُ لَهْ فِرَاشٌ مِنَ النَّارِ. And a furnishing from the furnishings of the hellfire is going to be furnished with that. عِيَاذُ بِاللَّهِ. So the Shaykh, he says, فَعَذَابُ الْقَبْرِ أَوْ نَعِيمُهُ ثَابِتان فِي الْكِتَابِ وَالسُّنَّةِ. So the punishment and the bliss of the grave, these are 2 affairs that are established in the Quran and the Sunnah. قال صلى الله عليه وسلم تعوذوا بالله من أربع. So the Prophet صلى الله عليه وسلم said in the authentic hadith, seek refuge with Allah from 4. من عذاب جهنم. From the punishment and the torment of the fire. ومن عذاب القبر. And from the torment of the grave. ومن فتنة المحيا والممات. And from the trial and the tribulation of life and death. وَمِن فِتْنَةِ الْمَسِيحِ الدَّجَّالِ. And from the trial and tribulation of the Antichrist. فَكَانَ صَلَّى اللَّهُ عَلَيْهِ وَسَلَّمْ يَتَعَوَّذُ مِنْ عَذَابِ الْقَبْرِ. So the Prophet صلى الله عليه وسلم used to seek refuge with Allah from the punishment of the grave. And with that, inshallah, we'll suffice for tonight. وَسُبْحَانَكَ اللَّهُمَّ وَبِحَمْدِكَ أَشْهَدُ أَنْ لَا إِلَهَ إِلَّا أَنْتَ أَسْتَغْفِرُكَ وَأَتُوبُ إِلَيْكَ.